Today, I, Lila of Nevillution, will be commenting on Neville Goddard's 1952 book, The Power of Awareness. In Chapter 1, I Am, Neville talks about who you are. For when you know who you are, you'll be better able to understand how these mystical laws operate and how to succeed in being a master of your own fate, manifesting what you want. Neville says, at the center of manifestation, there is only one I Am, manifesting in legions of forms or concepts of itself, and I am that I am. I am is a feeling of permanent awareness. The very center of consciousness is the feeling of I am. I may forget who I am, where I am, what I am, but I cannot forget that I am. The awareness of being remains, regardless of the degree of forgetfulness of who, where, and what I am. For Neville teaches you, the man is actually the arbitrator of his own fate, and that it is his concept of himself that determines the world in which he lives, and his concept of himself is his reactions to life. For me, I better understood this when I looked at the night dream, and you see all these people and places and things, and while you're dreaming, they seem separate from you. But when you wake up, they all dissolved back into you. And mystics have been trying to say, what we call reality is similar, just a longer dream. But it has similar qualities. And if you understand this, then you'll be able to not react to what you see and be able to realize the power of what you imagine, of what you allow to make an impression on your subconscious mind. For anything you notice, good or bad, judgments, feelings, you're mixing with that energy. And as you continue, that is what's going to outpicture into your life's experiences. And most times, as Neville's taught, we don't always remember when we planted these manifesting seeds. But these teachings will help you become more aware and thus master your fate, master your life, get the things you want. In Chapter 4, Desire, Neville teaches to get what you want. You have to imagine you already have what you want. And without doing this, whether intentionally or as many do unintentionally, you can't get what you want. Neville says, the ideal you seek and hope to attain will not manifest itself, will not be realized by you, until you've imagined that you are already that ideal. All transformation is based upon suggestion, and this can work only where you lay yourself completely open to an influence. You must abandon yourself to your ideal, as a woman abandons herself to love, for complete abandonment of self to it is the way to union with your ideal. You must assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, until your assumption has all the sensory vividness of reality. You must imagine that you are already experiencing what you desire. That is, you must assume the feeling of the fulfillment of your desire until you are possessed by it, and this feeling crowds all other ideas out of your consciousness. Now, even though many people might not intentionally know this law, many people are still able to get what they want because they'll daydream or fantasize and lose themselves until they outgrow the present desires and reach a point where something feels too big and they feel frustrated, they can't get it. But somehow they know there must be some way, and often they come upon these mystical laws. So become aware when you catch yourself daydreaming or fantasizing, or just like when you watch a movie and forget you're watching actors, actresses. You lose yourself completely, and you could learn to do this intentionally with your own imaginary conversations and or intentional daydreams, as though you already have or already are all that you want to be. Practice makes perfect. And each growing success will help your faith muscle grow until you're living the life that you want to be living again and again, knowing your next life is this life, as Neville taught. In Chapter 7, Attitude, Neville really shows the beauty in learning the art of imagination and how magical it is. Because as you imagine, it starts to change everything. Had you not imagined, would have just remained the same. When you really lose yourself in imagination, life is not the same what it was before, and persisted, can really revolutionize one's life. Neville says, your assumption is the hand of God, molding the firmament into the image of that which you assume. The assumption of the wish fulfilled is the high tide, which lifts you easily off the bar of the senses where you have so long lain stranded. It lifts the mind into prophecy, in the full right sense of the word. And if you have that controlled imagination and absorbed attention, which it is possible to attain, you may be sure that all your assumption implies will come to pass. In Chapter 8, Renunciation, Neville makes a distinction of not trying to resist your doubts and limitations or any scary thoughts, because that will often perpetuate what you don't want. But instead, he teaches you, place your attention instead on what you want as though it already is, when you have your imaginal exercises from the premise of your wish or wishes fulfilled. Neville says, there is a great difference between resisting evil and renouncing it. When you resist evil, you give it your attention. You continue to make it real. When you renounce evil, you take your attention from it and give your attention to what you want. Now is the time to control your imagination and give beauty for ashes, joy for mourning, praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified. You give beauty for ashes when you concentrate your attention on things as you would like them to be, rather than on the things as they are. You give joy for mourning when you maintain a joyous attitude, regardless of unfavorable circumstances. You give praise for the spirit of heaviness when you maintain a confident attitude instead of succumbing to despondency. In this quotation, the Bible uses the word tree as a synonym for man. You become a tree of righteousness when the above mental states are a permanent part of your consciousness. In Chapter 10, Creation, Neville teaches you that everything already exists and within you, and what you put your attention on, you bring alive, whether it's success or failure. So choose wisely. Realize the power of your mind. The whole of creation exists in you, and it is your destiny to become increasingly aware of its infinite wonders and to experience even greater and grander portions of it. And Neville goes on to tell you how goodness begets goodness, and the reverse can happen when you think of things that aren't so good. When you start to take an assumption, that assumption will start to lead to other imaginings and ideas and feelings. So don't let yourself get carried away by doubts, fears, and failures. You must build this imaginal muscle by practice. And as you practice this imaginal muscle and assume you are who you want to be, and or that you have all that you want, the feelings will continue to beget good feelings. So continue to nurture this and replace any doubts and fears until you gel in all the goodness. Neville says, if you assume that you have a wonderful business, you will notice how in your imagination, your attention is focused on incident after incident relating to that assumption. Friends congratulate you, tell you how lucky you are. Others are envious and critical. From there, your attention goes to larger offices, bigger bank balances, and many other similarly related events. Persistence in this assumption will result in actually experiencing, in fact, that which you assumed. The same is true regarding any concept. If your concept of yourself is that you are a failure, you would encounter in imagination a whole series of incidences in correspondence to that concept. So with all the Neville's teaching here, remember, you are the master of your imagination. Use it intentionally to keep it on the road of goodness. And no matter how many times you have to correct your steering, 70 times 7, don't beat yourself up as long as it takes. In Chapter 12, Subjective Control, Neville really emphasizes here to really make time for your imaginal sessions, to really test out this imagination and to develop it. For how else will you be able to cross over from what you knew before, living by just the senses, by the limitations of reality, and to think more like God, and to master your fate, to find your heaven within, thus reflected all around you, to use your most powerful instrument, your imagination, to shape your reality and experiences, to find your heaven on earth, and close the door to the nightmares of life you once thought you had no control over. Neville says, when you are able to control the movements of your attention in the subjective world, you can modify or alter your life as you please. But this control cannot be achieved if you allow your attention to be attracted constantly from without. Each day, set yourself the task of deliberately withdrawing your attention from the objective world and of focusing it subjectively. In other words, concentrate on these thoughts or moods which you deliberately determine. Then those things that now restrict you will fade and drop away. The day you achieve control of the movements of your attention in the subjective world, you are master of your fate. In Chapter 15, The Crown of the Mysteries, Neville has a beautiful way of summing up the assumption of the wish fulfilled. Neville says, "The assumption of the wish fulfilled is the ship that carries you over the unknown seas to the fulfillment of your dream. The assumption is everything. Realization is subconscious and effortless." Now in Chapter 19, Essentials, Neville breaks it down a little bit more, the essential points. Take note. The essential points in the successful use of the law of assumption are these. First, and above all, yearning, longing, intense burning desire. With all your heart, you must want to be different from what you are. Intense burning, combined with intention to make good, is the mainspring of action, the beginning of all successful ventures. In every great passion, which achieves its objective, desire is concentrated and intentioned. You must first desire and then intend to succeed. Second, cultivate physical immobility, a physical incapacity not unlike the state described by Keats in his Ode to a Nightingale. "A drowsing numbness pains my senses as though of hemlock I had drunk." It is a state akin to sleep, but one in which you are still in control of the direction of attention. You must learn to induce this state at will, but experience has taught me that it is more easily induced after a substantial meal, or when you awake in the morning, feeling very loath to arise. Then you are naturally disposed to enter this state. The value of physical immobility exposes itself in the accumulation of mental force, which absolute stillness brings with it. It increases your power of concentration. The third and last thing to do is to experience in your imagination what you would experience in reality had you achieved your goal. You must gain it in imagination first, for imagination is the very door to the reality of that which you seek. But use imagination masterfully, and not as an onlooker thinking of the end, but as a partaker thinking from the end. The application of these 3 points: 1. Desire. 2. Physical immobility. 3. The assumption of the wish already fulfilled is the way to at-one-ment or union with your objective. And so, having studied Neville off and on for the past half-decade plus, I find the best time to practice is when I have that burning desire. The times I don't have such a burning desire, I just enjoy what is. And I think we've all experienced this sleepy state, where we're so sleepy we don't want to get up, but we still have some conscious control of our mind. I find this very easy. I came to know this state when I would listen to guided meditations, and I would start to get sleepy, but I could still hear and follow along with what I was being guided to do. And although Neville often talked about sleeping in the mood, I often found that when I woke up and I was a little lazy to get out of bed, I was in a very liquidy, dreamy state, and yet conscious. And I know for Neville Goddard's father, he often used to imagine his business for the day, having the conversations, seeing things go the way he wanted after he had a good lunch, and he was sitting back in a relaxing chair. So find the spot or spots that are best for you. So when you have that burning desire for something, or maybe just the desire to really test these things out, find the sweet spots in the day where you're relaxed, but not too relaxed, to have your imaginal sessions. And the last point, Neville has you imagine from your wish fulfilled, not just looking at it as a spectator. And for many people, they'll realize they already do this. Maybe they're daydreaming about a vacation, or even when people have sexual fantasies, where you're not watching, you are living that fantasy. That's how you become one with what you want. And you properly persist in it as need be to outpicture it. And for the rest of the time, you keep a good guard, pruning your garden of fears and doubts, and not partaking of things that don't make you feel so good, like gossip or negative news, knowing that these energies mixing with the noble and lovely things that you want could color and alter or delay what you want. In Chapter 21, Free Will, Neville stresses the best time to start is now, and he stresses always to imagine the best. Sometimes people don't feel they're worthy or something's possible, so they'll imagine for something lesser, but you're always going to be haunted for something greater. But it's not to say, as I have heard stories where people imagined for something lesser to build their confidence and they did get it. Neville says, make your assumptions the highest, noblest, happiest concepts. There's no better time to start than now. The present moment is always the most opportune in which to eliminate all unlovely assumptions and to concentrate only on the good. As well as for yourself, claim to others their divine inheritance. See only their good and the good in them. Stir the highest in others to confidence and self-assertion by your sincere assumption of their good, and you will be their prophet and their healer, for an inevitable fulfillment awaits all sustained assumptions. You win by assumption what you can never win by force. An assumption is a certain motion of consciousness. This motion, like all motion, exercises an influence on the surrounding substance, causing it to take the shape of, echo, and reflect the assumption. So as best as you can, assume the best for others as well, as we're all connected, and everything's a reflection of us anyways, so we might as well make everything noble and beautiful as best as we can. And in doing so, you mixing with that beautiful energy also begets you with that beautiful energy. In Chapter 22, Persistence, Neville stresses that although sometimes it can happen with just one imaginal session, for many people, until they learn to master this, imaginal arts, build this imaginal muscle, the faith muscle as well, continue to repeat these imaginal acts. And it's not so much as Neville has taught before to have to stress out to do this, because you don't want to then manifest stress, but keep it light and fun and frequent. Maybe throughout the day, little moments where you catch that feeling, freshen up that energy of feeling the feeling of your wish is fulfilled. Neville says, your assumption to be effective cannot be a single isolated act. It must be a maintained attitude of the wish fulfilled, and that maintained attitude that gets you there, so that you think from your wish fulfilled instead of thinking about your wish, is aided by assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled frequently. It is the frequency, not the length of time, that makes it natural. That to which you constantly return constitutes your truest self. Frequent occupancy of the feeling of the wish fulfilled is the secret of success. And as Neville taught, we need this frequency because we have gelled so long in maybe a state we don't want to be, and that's why it feels so natural and hard to break. But when you frequently, but joyfully, lightly use your imagination, this is how you start to overcome that, because that will trump all else. Persisted. In Chapter 23, Case Histories, Neville gives us some wonderful examples of the law being used. He tells the one story of a grandmother who came and who happened to bring her little son along, and he was listening, and he decided to test it out himself. When the boy and his grandmother were leaving, he looked up at me with great excitement and said, I know what I want, and now I know how to get it. Surprise, I asked him what it is he wanted. He told me he had his heart set on a puppy. Now his grandmother strongly protested that he couldn't have a puppy, his parents didn't want it. In fact, the father had a great hatred of dogs. But the boy simply refused all this. Now I know what to do, he said. Every night, just as I am going off to sleep, I'm going to pretend that I have a dog and we are going for a walk. No, said the grandmother, that is not what Mr. Neville means. This was not meant for you. You cannot have a dog. Approximately 6 weeks later, the grandmother told me what was to her an astonishing story. The boy's desire to own a dog was so intense that he had absorbed all that I had told his grandmother of how to attain one's desire, and he believed implicitly that at last he knew how to get a dog. Putting this belief into practice for many nights, the boy imagined a dog was lying in his bed beside him. In imagination, he petted the dog, actually feeling its fur. Things like playing with the dog and taking it for a walk filled his mind. Within a few weeks it happened. A newspaper in the city in which the boy lived organized a special program in connection with Kindness to Animals Week. All school children were requested to write an essay on why I would like to own a dog. And you guys can guess, he won. In an elaborate ceremony, which was publicized with stories and pictures in the newspaper, the boy was awarded a beautiful collie puppy. In relating this story, the grandmother told me that if the boy had been given the money with which to buy a dog, the parents would have refused to do so and would have used it to buy a bond for the boy or put it in the savings bank for him. Furthermore, if someone had made the boy a gift of a dog, they would have refused it or given it away. But the dramatic manner in which the boy got the dog, the way he won the city-wide contest, the stories and pictures in the newspaper, the pride of achievement and joy of the boy himself all combined to bring about a change of heart in the parents, and they found themselves doing that which they never conceived possible. They allowed him to keep the dog. All this the grandmother explained to me, and she concluded by saying that there was one particular kind of dog on which the boy had his heart set. It was a collie, and a collie is what he won. So be like this child, and no matter what seems impossible, be excited to go to bed, or whenever you choose to have your imaginal session, and enjoy in imagination what your heart burns for, and have so much fun you'll persist however long it takes. You'll get what you want. In one way or another, you'll get what you want. And if you can follow Neville's teachings, have fun with it, and let it come as it comes, it will come in the most magical way. Now, Neville had a lady who, at the end of one of his lectures in the question and answer period, she also shared her own testimonial. A week before, when she had left the lecture, she found her niece very distressed. The husband of the niece, who was an officer in the Army Air Force stationed in Atlanta City, had just been ordered, along with the rest of his unit, to active duty in Europe. She tearfully told her aunt that the reason she was upset was that she had been hoping her husband would be assigned to Florida as an instructor. They both loved Florida and were anxious to be stationed there and not to be separated. Upon hearing the story, the aunt stated that there was only one thing to do, and that was to apply immediately: the law of assumption. "Let's actualize it," she said. "What would you do? You would feel the warm breeze. You would smell the salt air. You would feel your toes sinking down into the sand." They took off their shoes and, turning out the lights, in imagination, they felt themselves actually in Florida, feeling the warm breeze, smelling the sea air. Pushing 48 hours later, the husband received a change of orders. His new instructions were to report immediately to, you guessed it, Florida, and as an Air Force instructor. 5 days later, his wife was on a train to join him. So what is it you burn for? And what would you experience if you already had it? Use your powerful senses of your imagination and feel those things. In Chapter 24, Failure. In this chapter, Neville deals when you feel you've done everything that he said, but you still don't have what you want, even after persisting. What is the reason for failure? The answer to this is the most important factor in the successful use of the law of assumption. The time it takes your assumption to become fact, your desire to be fulfilled, is directly proportionate to the naturalness of you feeling of already being what you want to be, of already having what you desire. The fact that it does not feel natural to you to be what you imagine yourself to be is the secret of failure. And the secret to your naturalness? Your imagination. Continue to fill your consciousness with your imagination, catching the feeling of the wish fulfilled using your various senses. And when you really catch the feeling and you continue to do this, on some level, you'll just start to feel it's done. And in a way, spiritually, imaginatively, some supernatural level, you already have what you want. And some people who are very sensitive, they might pick up on it. Like there are things I imagined for, and sometimes I would meet people who talked to me and said, yeah, I thought you already had this for some reason, because they picked up what I had been vividly imagining. And when you start to catch this kind of feeling that Neville's talking about, there comes a sort of relaxation. I almost started to feel I was on autopilot. Like no matter what happened, what delays, you're just so cemented into the end picture. You just see everything as temporal little things surely on the way, that whatever you want is, you just know it's done. In Chapter 26, Neville talks about what our destiny is. Of course, Neville's teaching you create your destiny. And through the growing awareness of the power of your own consciousness, you intensify your appreciation of the richness and grandeur of life. Neville says, regardless of occasional experiences to the contrary, it is your destiny to rise to higher and higher states of consciousness and to bring into manifestation more and more of creation's infinite wonders. This very day, start your new life. Approach every experience in a new frame of mind, with a new state of consciousness. Assume the noblest and the best of yourself in every respect and continue therein. Make believe. Great wonders are possible. So what Neville's teaching you, don't limit yourself, no matter how impossible something may seem, especially if it's something that's deeply heartfelt. Do the good works, the intentional imaginal sessions, and be open and surrender to however the depths of your being, the God of you and in everything, brings it about to be. Chapter 27, Reverence. Neville says, in all creation, in all eternity, in all the realms of your infinite being, the most wonderful fact is that which is stressed in the first chapter of this book. You are God. You are the I am that I am. You are consciousness. You are the Creator. This is the mystery. This is the great secret known by the seers, prophets, and mystics throughout the ages. This is the truth that you can never know intellectually. Who is this you? That it is you, John Jones or Mary Smith, is absurd. It is the consciousness which knows that you are John Jones or Mary Smith. It is your greater self, your deeper self, your infinite being. Call it what you will. The important thing is that it is within you. It is you. It is your world. It is this fact that underlies the immutable law of assumption. It is upon this fact that your very existence is built. It is this fact that is the foundation of every chapter of this book. No, you cannot know this intellectually. You cannot debate it. You cannot substantiate it. You can only feel it. You can only be aware of it. Becoming aware of it, one great emotion permeates your being. You live with a perpetual feeling of reverence. The knowledge that your Creator is the very self of yourself and never would have made you had He not loved you must fill your heart with devotion, yes, with adoration. One knowing glimpse of the world about you at any single instant of time is sufficient to fill you with profound awe and a feeling of worship. It is when your feeling of reverence is most intense that you are closest to God. And when you are closest to God, your life is richest. Our deepest feelings are precisely those we are least able to express, and even in the act of adoration, silence is our highest praise. And now, let us go into the silence together. Good.